So, good evening. Welcome to this meeting of the Board of Education. This meeting is being televised live on AACPS TV and streamed on AACPS's YouTube channel. General information and protocols for the meeting are posted on the sign by the doorway as you enter the room. And so please make sure you read those if you have not already done so. At this time, we'll have our invocation. Oh God, we pray to administer that which is just in all educational policies, being ever mindful of your guidance. Stir us to action with love, wisdom, and understanding. And now for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And so we're going to move on to item 2.03. That's the approval of our minutes. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? We have consensus? And we do. Okay. So we're going to move on to item 2.04, establish our agenda order. Ms. Frank.
I move that item 6.03, learning management system, be removed from the agenda and considered by the board at a future meeting.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Ms. Howe.
Dr. Tobin,
Aye.
Ms. Ellis,
Aye.
Ms. Schulheim,
Aye.
Ms. Hamdawi,
Aye.
Ms. Frank,
Aye.
Mr. Silkworth.
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0.
Okay, Ms. Frank.
I move that the board add ratification of the negotiated agreement between the Board of Education and the Teachers Association of Anne Arundel County, TAC, for fiscal year 2025 to the agenda as the first action item.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Ms. Howe.
Dr. Tobin,
Aye.
Ms. Ellis,
Aye.
Ms. Schulheim,
Aye.
Ms. Hamdawi,
Aye.
Ms. Frank,
Aye.
Mr. Silkworth.
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0.
Okay, so now we're going to move on to the establishment of our agenda. And this evening, do I have a motion?
I motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion? Consensus? Okay, we're fine. So we're going to be moving on to item 2.05, Student Equity in Action Spotlight. Ms. Frank.
Yes, thank you, President Silkworth. Throughout the year, the board is honored to recognize students for their efforts in identifying and working to eliminate inequities in their school and home communities. Tonight, the board recognizes the first recipient of the Student Equity in Action Spotlight for this school year, Miss Lindsay Reardon, an 11th grade student from Northeast High School. Lindsay is an officer in Northeast Best Buddies Club, which promotes the inclusion and acceptance of students with disabilities, as well as one-on-one friendships. Lindsay holds the role of buddy director, a job reserved for a person who serves in a leadership capacity. One of her duties is promoting and participating in fundraising events. She has sold chocolate bars and enlisted others, including her parents, to assist in sales that benefit the Best Buddies program. Lindsay has been instrumental in planning, organizing, conducting, and participating in nearly every Best Buddy event at Northeast. These events include Friendsgiving, bingo, scavenger hunts, holiday activities, karaoke nights, and more. I love karaoke. Another event that the Best Buddies organizes and conducts is the Spread the Word campaign. Lindsay worked with her fellow officers to plan and canvass the school body during their advisory periods to sign pledges to promote a safe and inclusive school community. Lindsay and her fellow officers collected and then posted 800 pledges in the school lobby that were seen by students, staff members, and visitors to the school. Lindsay's impact isn't just limited to Northeast. She serves her community by visiting various local elementary schools over the past 2 years to be a guest reader and role model to younger students. On March 15, 2024, Lindsay received the Maryland Buddy Director of the Year Award in recognition of her many accomplishments by the Maryland Best Buddies organization. But that's not all. Lindsay is a top bowler on the Northeast High School Unified Bowling Team. This is a passion of hers in which she competes in both local and out-of-state tournaments. Lindsay says that being a part of Unified Bowling has allowed her to cultivate and maintain friendships with students whom she may never have otherwise had an opportunity to meet in her day-to-day interactions. Lindsay Reardon, you are an outstanding student and a positive role model to others. We are proud to recognize you as the October 2024 Student Equity in Action Spotlight. Congratulations. And would you please come forward and accept this award?
For you as well as a certificate. So look at that. And then I like to, there's some very, very nice things that people have put together about you. And I think it would be nice for you to take that home as well because people clearly admire what you've done. So thank you so much. Thank you. Here with your parents tonight? Yes. Yes. Are you involved in driving all over the place for all of these events? Yeah, I know that. Well, you're very, very dedicated, and we greatly appreciate your efforts. Thank you so much. Yes, thank you.
So we're going to take a short break for photographs. We'll be back in just a bit. So welcome back. We're going to be moving on to our item 3.0, public comments on agenda items. So this is one of the opportunities that the board provides to hear the views and receive advice of community members. The members of this board appreciate hearing from interested citizens. As appropriate, we will refer your concerns to the superintendent for follow-up by his staff. While we encourage public input on policies, programs, and practices within the purview of this board and the school system, this is not the proper forum to address specific student or employee matters or to comment on matters that do not relate to public education in Arundel County. I remind everyone that any inappropriate personnel remarks or other behavior that disrupts or interferes with the conduct of this meeting are out of order. Persons who otherwise disrupt or disturb this meeting will not be allowed to continue their remarks. It is not the board's general practice to engage in question and answer sessions with speakers. For the record, please give your name before speaking. Handouts should be given to the board assistant. I ask that speakers observe the 2-minute clock. A yellow light will shine when you have 30 seconds remaining, and a tone will sound when your time has expired. Please conclude your remarks when you hear the tone. If you continue after your time has expired, the microphone will be turned off. It could also be turned off if a speaker addresses specific student or employee matters or are commenting on matters not related to public education in Anne Arundel County. And so this evening, we have one speaker speaking on item 7.04, Parent Family Community Involvement Code, KH. Mary Dodoni.
Mary Dodoni for the NAACP. Good evening, members of the board, Superintendent Bedell, and everyone out there viewing this meeting in person or online. I'm honored to testify today on behalf of the Anne Arundel County branch of the NAACP under the authorization of Branch President Stephen Waddy, who has reviewed and approved these statements. The NAACP appreciates the inclusive and collaborative nature of the proposed policy BH, for those who aren't familiar with it, parent, family, and community involvement. We recognize the value of the different types of expertise and knowledge held by each of the stakeholder groups and the need for collaborative reasoning and collaborative problem solving among these groups. The NAACP itself falls under the category of community organization, but our members, individually and collectively, are parents, educators, staff, former board members, administrators as well. Furthermore, our members' children and youth who have been and may again be members of the Anne Arundel County NAACP youth organizations have a voice of their own. As the Anne Arundel County NAACP, we recommit to making our organizational voice heard and to helping our members and their children have their voices heard as well as we all take our places in accomplishing an educational structure that enables each and every student to achieve their highest potential. That is our goal, and we commit to ensuring it remains the goal we call for in each and every AACPS discussion. Since this board has been elected, the NAACP has been a valuable collaborative partner through our involvement in the joint initiative, in the development of the new strategic plan, in our participation in many AACPS workshops and forums, in our active role in the Equity Advisory Committee, in our numerous testimonies before this board, and in our engagement with AACPS and our own meetings. We commit to maintaining this level of engagement to ensure the protection of the rights for all Black, Brown, LGBTQ+, low-income, immigrant, and special education students and their families. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So that does conclude our public comments this evening. We'll move on to item 4.0. We have a 4.01, we have a presentation this evening, a new learning management system.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have two of our staff members who are coming up, Ms. Catalano and Mr. Borkowski, who will take us through this presentation. Just a little bit of context, as you all know, one of the things that came out of COVID was the need to have a learning management system that would allow for the school district to have the ability to provide anytime, anywhere learning. And that decision prior to my arrival was Brightspace. Upon arriving, there were some concerns about implementation of Brightspace and the ability to use it. And so we are now in a situation where I think we've done a significant amount of due diligence and assessments. And as we think about this process for engaging the community and stakeholders, today you will have an opportunity to hear where we are as we prepare the next evolution of bringing a learning management system to the county. So I'll pass it over to our staff.
Thanks. Just waiting for it to come up. Okay. Good evening, President Silkworth, Vice President Frank, Dr. Bedell, and members of the board. For the record, my name is Christina Catalano. I'm the Chief Academic Officer, and this evening I am joined by my colleague.
Good evening. My name is Mike Borkowski. I'm the Chief Information Officer.
And so this evening we are going to share with you information regarding a transition to a new learning management system. This is in preparation of a contract that's going to be before the board on November 6th. This presentation is going to walk you through the why we are looking at transitioning to a learning management system and why we went out for a request for information or an RFI for a new learning management system. We're also going to speak a lot tonight to the process, what that RFI process looked like, and then finally we're going to speak to the transition. Are we to transition to this new learning management system? We want to share with the board what that will look like. And so to begin this evening, I do want to start by grounding us all in the definition of a learning management system. From here on out, you'll probably hear us refer to it as an LMS. because oftentimes platforms are considered LMSs when they are not. So when you think of an LMS, you really want to think about one comprehensive platform that supports all teaching, learning, assessment, and data reporting in one system in a digital environment. It really, from an academic standpoint, has the core functions of resource sharing, communication, and enhanced educational experience. An LMS is not a learning platform. It's different. So Google Classroom, for example, is a learning platform. It's not a learning management system. LMSs are much more comprehensive in terms of their integration and the seamless nature by which you can interface with it. And in terms of security protocol, it's a more comprehensive system.
So how did we get here? During Dr. Bedell's listening and learning tours that he conducted soon after arriving to AACPS, we were out in the community talking with students, staff, community members, and one constant pain point we heard was around our learning management system. So from there, as normal, we actually came back. We had a lot of discussions. We engaged in research around what are the current trends in learning management systems. Because at the time we procured our previous learning management system, we really didn't have any experience here. So we learned a lot. Ultimately, it resulted in the decision for us to move forward with an RFI process to identify the best platform to take us forward.
And so I want to talk a little bit about how we began that journey once we decided that we wanted to go out for an RFI process for a learning management system. We really came together and said, in order to be able to do that, to go through the process, we need to have a vision in AACPS for what we want a learning management system to be and what we want it to do for all of our stakeholder groups. And so as you can see, there were 3 parts to the vision that was created for an LMS in AACPS. We wanted an LMS where AACPS can provide streamlined access to all of our curated content and our digital resources for all of our users. So all of our instructional staff, our administrators, our students, and our families. We wanted to use this as an opportunity to develop a digital ecosystem. And I will talk a little bit more about that later, but essentially a digital ecosystem allows our users to unlock one door. And then once they unlock that door, they have access to all of the things that are relevant to them as a user. So it's user responsive. And then finally, we want a learning management system that's going to support the teaching and learning process, our assessment and data reporting, all in a digital environment. So once we established that vision, we thought about all of the components that we would need in a learning management system in order to satisfy that. We wanted a learning management system, obviously, that was going to provide anytime, anywhere learning, whether that be through face-to-face instruction, blended instruction, or online learning. We needed a place that was going to house all of our written curriculum and all of our content. We wanted a system that would have data and assessment capabilities, knowing that we are continuing in AACPS to modernize our system. We wanted to make sure that this was a system that could grow with us as we move through that modernization process. We needed to have a grading component. We wanted robust communication tools, and then finally the ability to customize and personalize learning.
So the RFI evaluation process, we convene a cross-functional team of stakeholders to work on the details on what we would be looking for in a learning management system. To note, the current system, when we evaluated it, had 101 total requirements. 58 of those were for teaching and learning. The new RFI process that we just went through had 397 total system requirements, of which 350 of them were directly related to teaching and learning. 3 LMS vendors submitted materials during the RFI process: D2L, Instructure, and PowerSchool. The requirement responses, demos, and sandboxes of all 3 vendors were consistently reviewed and scored. After conducting a thorough RFI process, the team of cross-functional stakeholders considered the requirements we were looking for, the functionality presented to them by the vendors, the fiscal impact, and the scoring of the evaluators. In total, 90 stakeholders were invited to participate in the sandbox phase and provide their valuable input. As mentioned, we had a rigorous evaluation process, and we had a lot of requirements to review. The sandbox phase really allowed our stakeholders to get their hands on the system, to try tasks, to see how it's going to work. So again, our stakeholders and stakeholder groups included not just staff, administrators, but also parents and students. So when we went through the process and we identified a product that we wanted to go forward with, then we had to go and figure out a cooperative agreement that we can actually ride to be able to negotiate a contract. It took over 2.5 months to finalize the contract that will be coming to the board for consideration in the future board meeting. The best fit, Canvas. Ultimately, the process revealed that Canvas is a robust LMS and the best fit for AACPS to support our LMS vision and to align to our strategic plan. Currently, the following Maryland K-12 school systems are either moving to or currently using Canvas: Baltimore City Public Schools, Charles County Public Schools, Harford County Public Schools, Howard County Public Schools, Montgomery County Public Schools, and Prince George's County Public Schools. Also, the following Maryland higher education institutions are currently using Canvas: Anne Arundel Community College, Goucher College, Mount St. Mary's College, Morgan State University, the University of Maryland College Park, University of Maryland Eastern Shore, and Salisbury University. When we talk about evaluation data, obviously we had a lot of information to go through. And again, vendor demos were very important. This gave the vendors the opportunity to showcase their products. So, again, we had staff that were actually going through and doing evaluations, but the sandbox really was the key for us because we really wanted to go and use it in the environment to see how it's going to work for us. So again, the tasks were performed in the sandbox. And then as far as the feedback goes, teachers, administrative staff, our curriculum and content folks, and students all ranked Canvas as being a system that's actually easily usable by the end user. So also, the end user interface was something we really wanted to consider. Again, ease of use. So the feedback we received from our stakeholders was specifically it was simple, easy to use, user-friendly, and intuitive. And I want to really stress the intuitive part because, again, any technology system you put out there is great, but if the end users really can't navigate their way through it at nights, weekends, when they're on their own, you want to be able to have something that's easy to use or has lots of self-help and resources available to them.
And so I do want to share some highlights of things that we feel will be improved with this transition to Canvas. The first, and Mr. Borkowski just alluded to this, is the idea of navigation. We will see improved navigation for all of our users, but especially our students at the elementary level. Canvas, similar to other learning management systems, is truly a K through higher ed learning management system, but the interface is different depending on the end user. And so it does actually have an interface that is specifically designed for younger learners. So if I'm in 5th grade, I'm not accessing an interface that someone in high school or someone in college is using. Collaboration is another improved function that we will see in a variety of areas. I'm just going to highlight 3 that are important to our users. The first is around content sharing. So teacher to teacher, instructional staff to instructional staff. If I've created content, I can very easily share that with a colleague. Additionally, if I've created a learning sort of, we'll call it a learning playlist for my students where they can access all of the materials that they need for a lesson. I can very easily share that course to course. Canvas also has a studio that supports collaboration. It really provides an opportunity for both our instructional staff, our teachers, and our students to have shareable collections, which is a great way for them to collaborate on their work, their assignments, their media, their interactive way of producing evidence of their proficiency towards standards. So the studio is a very interactive, collaborative tool. It also contains template courses, which is a really good feature in that at the district level, if we create a course in the learning management system and we need to update maybe a learning object in that course or an instructional resource that's tied to that course, when we do that centrally, it is immediately populating the course that teachers can access. So there's no delay between a template course and what teachers are able to access. And then finally, there's a lot of enhanced feedback in this product. And when I say feedback, I mean the feedback between teachers and students on assignments. Teachers will be able to, whether an assignment is graded or not graded, have a lot of tools at their fingertips to be able to give feedback to their students around how they're performing on a specific assignment. I do want to talk about the alignment between the learning management system and our strategic plan, beginning with priority area 1. Obviously, when we look to achieve academic excellence, we want tools and resources that allow our teachers to implement rigorous curriculum. We want our students to have learning that is personalized and engaging. When we think about future readiness and transitional preparedness, we know that we have to expose our students to real-world technologies. They have to get comfortable learning and being adept in a learning management system. For anyone who has a student who is in higher ed right now, you know that that is the way they access all of their learning. Mr. Borkowski talked about several IHEs in the state of Maryland who use this particular learning management system. I do want to highlight as well, we do have a lot of students through our dual enrollment program who are enrolled in Anne Arundel Community College. And so this will be a seamless transition for students who are accessing dual enrollment in that they'll be in the same learning management system. Additionally, this does provide more robust tools and resources to our teachers and our instructional staff. The idea of a digital ecosystem really will address a lot of the findings that came out of the Gibson report that stated that our teachers felt like they had to go to too many places to find and locate what they needed in order to be able to deliver a lesson. This will take everything that they need and it will house it in one place. Additionally, I do want to highlight that several of the IHE partners that we have in our teacher development program, so teachers who come to us for student teaching, they are actually learners in Canvas because of the IHE that they go to currently. And so again, when we think about investing in our staff, for our teachers who are in our pipeline through our IHE partnerships, this also supports their transition to AACPS when they come to teach for us. In terms of supporting the whole child, this does employ functionality that will increase student engagement. And then finally, when we think about building and sustaining for our future, this is going to reduce technical debt. It's going to create operational efficiencies, and it will allow us to scale continuous updates in a much more seamless manner. One of the things that we know we need to do during this transition is improve upon things that we learned through the implementation of our first learning management system. We learned a lot in the first go around, and so we know that there are areas that we can improve upon as we transition to a new one. Beginning with ensuring that we're providing teachers with the tools, the features, the functions, the training, and the support that they need in order to be able to implement teaching and learning using this robust tool. We also know we need to continue to promote blended learning strategies by harnessing the tools and resources that will come with a learning management system. It's also going to provide what we talk about often, which is that flexibility for teachers. So they know the standards, they know the rigor of the standards, they know they have to meet that, but we don't want them to lose their creativity in instruction. And this is going to allow them flexibility with that. We want to improve how we are supporting our families in their engagement in the learning process. And so having one digital ecosystem where the learning management system is housed will allow our families to have a more seamless process when trying to get engaged with and accessing information about what their students are learning, whether that's through the instructional resources that are posted to students' courses, their assignments, or the feedback in the gradebook. And then finally, I spoke to the digital ecosystem. When we rolled out our first learning management system, it did not live in an ecosystem. It lived separately. And so I'll talk a little bit more about that in the sense that an ecosystem really allows our users to have that one-stop shop. So how is all of this going to happen? We have put together a steering committee that is cross-functional. It's inclusive of cross-functional teams from central office as well as school-based staff. They are going to oversee what I would call subcommittees that are looking at 7 specific focus areas that all need to move in lockstep together during this transition. So a great way to think about this is each focus area has a subject matter expert that is guiding a small project plan that pertains to their specific focus area. And then the steering committee makes sure that they are all working in lockstep with one another. And so you can see the sort of enormous lift that this can be when you look at all of the focus areas. We have to pay attention to curriculum and instruction, curriculum and assessments, instruction, grading and reporting, all of the integrations that need to take place behind the scenes from a technical standpoint, all of the system configurations and infrastructures in creating a place where you can knock once and have access to everything that you need. Again, I mentioned this in terms of areas of improvement. We need a robust professional development and support plan to support our instructional staff and administrators. And finally, we have a team that's working solely on communication to our stakeholders and feedback from our stakeholders. So I want to talk a little bit about that professional development and support plan, only because it is a focus as we think about lessons learned from our last implementation. I'm going to highlight, there's several things on this slide that pertain to the way we plan to build staff capacity. I want to highlight 2 of them. One of the things we're going to be doing in the 4th quarter is identifying voluntary early adapters. And so these early adapters will be school-based personnel, administrators, and instructional staff who will essentially be assigned tasks to complete in the learning management system, and then they will give the steering committee feedback on those tasks. This is where we test. This is where we see what's going to break. This is where we develop professional learning resources that we think are going to support the transition when we go to scale. So this is going to be a really important phase of professional learning. Additionally, I want to highlight the last bullet. Professional learning is really going to be about 2 things when it comes to a learning management system. It's going to be about the functionality, how this thing works, how do I get into it? But then it's also going to be about how do I deliver my content through the learning management system, which is much more job embedded. And so that is what will be delivered through the schoolhouse, through our structures that already exist, like department meetings and collaborative planning meetings. In terms of our communication and support plan for our families, our students and our families will have access to Explore Canvas. We will have a lot of self-guided printed and online tutorials and videos, again, on functionality, but then on what does this mean for me, for where my student is. We will obviously be communicating with families on how you can use this tool to engage in your students' learning. Where do you go to find the things you're looking for so that you can be active in your students' learning? And then finally, we have heard feedback that for our families and for our students, they too feel like they have to go to too many places to be engaged. And so we want to talk about the value of a digital ecosystem in supporting families and having less places to go. So this is our timeline. Pending approval of the contract, we will kick off this project in November. Through November and December, we will begin the first phases, which really speak to a lot of the back end of the transition, which is all of our system configuration that Mr. Burkowski's team will be working through. We will do a lot of central office administrative training so that as we move into the subsequent components of the timeline, we feel centrally our administration is equipped and prepared to support. January and February, we will go through what we're calling a content and data migration. And so what that means is not taking, but copying all of the data and content that currently lives in other places. So in Brightspace, on SharePoint sites, on Google sites, in other systems, and migrating that to the learning management system. Once it's all there, it'll still be available in all those other places so we can finish out the school year. But once it's there, we'll be able to do this early launch with our voluntary early adopters in the fourth quarter, because they will be able to then go into Canvas. All of the content will have been migrated and they can perform the tasks that we're going to ask them to perform and give us feedback on. And then from June through August, when teachers come back, we will implement the robust professional learning plan. Before we take questions, I do just want to take a moment to pause. There is an entire team of people who are behind Mr. Borkowski and myself who have been working diligently on this process since last spring. They have done a tremendous job making this a very inclusive process with a lot of stakeholders involved. Really working cross-functionally as a system, because we know that this doesn't just touch academics and it doesn't just touch IT. And so I just want to take a minute to express our gratitude for the team who stands behind us, who has really been driving this work. And so with that, thanks, and we're happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Ms. Schauheim.
Yes, thank you for this fabulous presentation. I do have a number of questions because I lived through the last rollout. So much fun. Not really. And so I have questions first and foremost about the requirements for teachers, because I think that was the first sign that it just wasn't going to work, is because we had this new thing and then we forced teachers to jump through all the hoops to use the new thing, which was hard to do coming out of COVID while using a myriad of other things. So if you can speak to that, I would be grateful.
Yeah, I'm happy to speak to that. And I think you've touched on a lot of things that what I would say created a little bit of a perfect storm, in the sense that we were coming out of COVID. It was a very abrupt, say, flick of a light switch from one system that teachers have been accustomed to using to a new system. This will be the go-to place for all things teaching and learning. What we have to ensure is that we provide the support and learning for it so that teachers feel confident in using it. And we have already started having conversations with TAC around that. There's some excitement there because we know there was a lot of frustrations for staff with the rollout of the last learning management system. Teachers, this is the place they will go to access everything they need to engage in the teaching and learning process, if that helps.
A little bit, but last time around it was like, no, you need to make a video, you need to post the video, you need to create your whatever, your slide deck or whatever, you need to post the slide deck. So are we taking out their autonomy to be creative, or
No,
what are we doing?
no, thank you for that clarification, because I didn't realize what you meant when you said requirements. So I appreciate that, because I wasn't here. So no, essentially, think of it as you used to be able to go to your teacher's guide. And in your teacher's guide, right, your lesson plan was laid out for you. But the teacher's guide would reference maybe an acceleration activity that you could do, or maybe, some pre-teaching that you could do. And then you as a teacher took all of that information from the curriculum and you curated the lesson that you wanted to deliver. That's how this will work. It's all just going to be in a digital platform.
Oh, okay. So it's web-based or app-based, or does it matter?
Both.
Okay, so if I'm a high school student, I would access this via an app I download onto my machine, or I access it by going to whatever my internet browser is. Sorry, I'm getting in the weeds.
No, it's okay. I'll start, and then when I am not speaking technically correct, Mike will jump in and save me. So this is what I mean by a digital ecosystem,
Yeah.
Michelle Heim. So think of a digital ecosystem. If you are on your laptop or your Chromebook, you are going to log into a web browser. You are going to go to a hosting site that when you sign in once, if you're a student or if you're a parent, you will then have available to you, based on your user profile, the resources and tools that you need. The learning management system will be one part of that digital ecosystem. Once you get into the learning management system, then all of your materials that pertain specifically to teaching and learning will be available to you. The ecosystem brings together and integrates several different pieces of content, learning tools, curriculum in one place that is seamless and secure. that
So
help?
instead of all the buttons on ClassLink, I don't know how to navigate, don't know what they mean. It does that simplify ClassLink or does that disappear ClassLink?
It will
sorry,
simplify.
I will-
No, it's
It'll
okay. It's a
simplify.
great question. It will
Yeah.
simplify ClassLink.
Okay.
You will see things start to disappear from
Oh, that's so
ClassLink.
good. Okay. Okay.
Yep.
I do have other questions, but I think I'm going to stop there and so maybe come back around depending on what the others ask. Thank you.
Ms. Frank?
Yes, thank you. I have a couple questions. Similarly, I'm also thinking about the rollout of Brightspace because I was here for that too. You talked about 90 stakeholders working in the sandbox. I believe I read that it was approximately a week that they had access to work on that. Is that correct, or am I not remembering that correctly?
I don't have that data in front of me right now. I'd have to go back and look at my notes. But I could provide
For
that.
Canvas, how long did they have?
I can't recall. I want to say it was approximately 2 weeks, but I don't want to speak to that specifically until I can look back at the notes.
Okay. Did we have a similar process when we evaluated Brightspace? Was it approximately 90 stakeholders, a week or two, somewhere in there, or was it a different process?
Again, I don't have that information in front of me, but I can provide it to you.
And can I ask a clarifying question? Are you talking about when D2L responded to this RFI, or are you talking about the original implementation of Brightspace?
The original implementation of
That's
Brightspace, when we migrated into Brightspace, I remember some teachers had some concerns in the sandbox. I wanted to know, I feel like those teachers had a month, but it's been a very long time, and that was maybe a detail that I'm not remembering. So I would like to compare what we did on the front end for both systems to see if we've improved in our processes. The next question I have is, what other LMS systems were evaluated before you went with Canvas?
And so that was in the presentation. There were 3 systems that responded to the RFI. The way it's listed in the presentation, though, is by the parent company's name. And so D2L is Brightspace. Instructure is Canvas, and PowerSchool is a product called Schoology.
Okay, and then what were some of the weaknesses in Canvas that maybe would have been offset in some of those other 2 systems that you mentioned? Was there any areas where Canvas was not as optimal as some of the other areas?
I wasn't part of the process, but I'm looking at
No.
not in the executive summary that I read.
So is there anything in Canvas that we should be looking at as like, hey, this is going to be a learning curve. This is going to be a little bit more work on the front end. I saw that you had a data migration, or content migration and data migration, January to February. Are AACPS employees doing that, or is it central office, or?
There's actually a tool built into Canvas to be able to do the data migrations and
Okay.
course migrations.
Okay. And then, so back to the question before that, is there anything that you can see that's going to be difficult for people when this is implemented, or if this is implemented?
I think with any change is always difficult for people. But again, what we have to do is really provide valued professional development and supports up front to be able to ease the overall transition.
Okay. if you had to pick something that you think might be a sticking point for folks to really get in front of an issue, like, hey, this is going to be something different, let's point it out on the front end, what do you think that would be?
That's the point of early adopters. Because a lot of those things, Ms. Frank, you don't know until the people who have to use the system get in and use it. And so one of the things that was not done in the last LMS adoption was an early adopter phase, where you allow users to go in and do the routine tasks that people are going to have to do when we launch, and they beat up on them. And they say, this works really well. This might be tricky. This should be an implication for professional learning when we go to train our teachers, because this was a little bit, this maybe wasn't as intuitive to me as a teacher as I thought it was. So that's a professional learning implication. So that is one of the reasons we're doing the early adopter phase in the fourth quarter this year, is so that if there are blind spots that we did not see through the evaluation process, we can have those surfaced.
Okay, and then what if there are significant concerns brought up at that point that you haven't recognized? Do you continue to move forward, or is there a pressure valve somewhere?
I think the process of evaluation was so robust that we don't anticipate that happening.
But if it happens, we will continue to look at it and reevaluate, just like we've done on a number of things. And if we have to make some adjustments working with the company, we will, just as we did with Brightspace. I also wanted to go back and just make sure that I give you a clarifying answer. When you talk about the 3 different vendors that had submitted to the RFI, Schoology was one that I thought would have done better, because it is through Power Schools and we have all of this Power School stuff. So I just want to make sure that I clarify that, but they did not make the cut based on what the evaluation team saw in the actual presentation.
Okay. Yeah, and if there are growing pains that, you can say, you can get ahead of and say, we understand this is going to be a bit more, that's why we offer professional development. That's why I think that helps when you roll something out like this. We got a lot of concern after the last one, having to double input things and having to migrate everything over. I mean, there was a lot. So if you can get in front of that, I think it would be really helpful. And right now you're not giving me any negatives. And I feel like it's not realistic to imagine that you're going to roll this out without any bumps. And I would really like to see where those bumps are before we take this at the next meeting. Thank you.
Okay, let me see. I think it's Dr. Tobin.
Thank you. Yeah, to follow up on some of Ms. Frank's questions, I guess to put a finer point on it, if we go through the early adopter phase and there's some things that really are not working for our system, what possibilities are, quite frankly, in the contract to customize where we need to customize? Because I heard often that was one of the problems with Brightspace, that we just hit these walls and there was simply no way to do that. So I guess that's my question. And do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, with, excuse me, with any software as a service, the system is the way it is out of the box. Now, you do have some opportunities for customizations, but it would really have to be, looking at the actual situation that you run into. Sometimes, though, it requires a process change. So it really depends upon the situation. It's hard to predict.
Okay. Again, to just some specifics that we heard, Dr. Bedell mentioned Power School. How is this going to impact, or will it impact, or will it provide any efficiencies in grade inputting? How's that gonna work?
Yeah, great question. So we will be using the gradebook in the new learning management system. So teachers will not have to duplicate any grade input.
Okay, so there will be
And-
one.
Correct. And parents will be able to see grades in the learning management system. So
Ah,
if you go in and you go into the grade book and you see your child has an 8 out of 10 on an assignment, you can actually click on the assignment and see what the assignment is. So we will be utilizing the grade book that is in the learning management system. I do want to say, though, that, and this was part of the evaluation process, there is a grade pass back between the learning management system and Power School.
okay.
And so Power School still becomes, for reporting purposes, report cards, reporting to MSDE, the source of truth. But that is because of the way the grades will get passed back really every 24 hours between. But for our users, if I'm a student, if I'm a teacher, if I'm a family member, I'm going into the LMS.
So the teacher just has to go in
Correct.
once to the LMS, because
One time.
that was a
One time.
huge issue that I heard a lot about. Okay, that's good to know. Again, you said this, but just to reiterate, you have found this to be equally usable at all levels, right?
There's a different, yes, because there's a different interface for elementary grade bands.
Okay, but also for the elementary educators, there's a different interface as well, right? I mean, this is what we heard about from the get-go, that there were so many things about Brightspace that did not fit elementary. So that's kind of what I'm trying to get at here from the educator's perspective.
So when they go in to access as a teacher their resources, their content, their curriculum, it will look just like it would if they were teaching 3rd grade or if they were teaching 6th grade, which is a good thing for teachers because they're not trying to learn 2 different systems of access. When they go to post things, is the word I'll use, to the student interface, it's really, they will be able to see what it looks like on the student end.
Okay.
But like if I were a teacher who has to transition, let's say I teach 4th grade and then I decide I'm going to go to middle school, my user experience and the way I access my materials will not look differently for me.
Okay.
Is that?
I think that, I mean, and again, I'm translating what I heard from elementary educators, but I heard consistently that it was, for lack of a more technical term, so incredibly clunky. They had 85 tabs open. The structure of the system was clearly based on high school, particularly high school teaching. And so that's what I'm really trying to get at, is that there's not an undue burden on one end or the other for one group of educators. So presumably that's been part of it. You mentioned at one point under the sort of 5 parts of our strategic plan that this would increase student engagement. Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, and we heard this actually in our last in the last teen advisory that Dr. Bedell had. Students are used to having technology to be able to access what they need from a learning standpoint. And so when I say it increases engagement, it supports their ability to access what they need.
Okay, all right. And now, how about elementary students? Are we talking about something different there, or are we?
So I do want to just say the experience in any blended learning or any educational setting where we are utilizing digital resources and tools such as a learning management system does look different from elementary to middle to high, because our curriculum is designed to be developmentally appropriate. Right. And so the experience at the elementary level overall is going to look differently than it will for a student in high school, just because there's just things that are not developmentally appropriate for students in elementary school to be accessing.
But you think it would similarly increase student engagement
I think
at
it
the
will,
elementary?
I do. And I think it will simplify their way of navigating instructional resources.
Okay. I do have a couple more questions, but I'll stop for now and we'll go around. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, before we continue, I just, as we move forward with this very important discussion, I'd like to, uh, let's everyone please refrain from mentioning some other companies. We're dealing with this one particular issue, Canvas, and let's focus on that at this time. So next we have Miss Ellis.
Thank you. Just a few things. Sorry. This goes back kind of to the selection process, because obviously we're a little stung from the first time around with an LMS. So I'm very involved in government contracting at the federal level, and to me, an RFI means a request for information where they seek information to help inform what they're actually looking for, which helps them create a request for a proposal. So in other words, that's a two-step process. So we go right from the RFI to a proposal. Like we received proposals. I'm trying to understand. Is what happened here, we put out a request for information and received proposals in response to that request?
Yep. So for the record, Matt Stansky, Chief Financial Officer. So the RFI is really an evaluation tool, right? So it is a method for us to evaluate the best product. The purchasing component came from the cooperative agreements. So each one of the companies that submitted information all had competitively bid co-ops with national entities. And so there was no need to do an RFP.
Got it.
Because we had the co-op available to us through state procurement rules and board policy. And so the RFI was really our method of evaluating the best product for teachers and students, and then using the co-op to then to execute the procurement process.
Okay. I think that's all. I guess, going back to the point I was making, a lot of times that RFI process is what makes you aware of what's out there and informs you what you're looking for and what questions to ask. And
Correct.
so
And then
forth.
you're not wrong in that typically what can happen is then you develop your RFP based on that, because you can refine your scope of work, refine your
Right.
requirements. But in this case, because we had the co-ops already available, we were able to then move to the phase of procurement once that thorough evaluation was done by the team over here.
All right. Thank you.
Yep.
Now you mentioned the many other school systems right here in Maryland. So what kind of interviews went on so that you can get those questions answered about where, what are the weaknesses? What do we need to prepare for?
So I can tell you, obviously, all of the entities that responded to the RFI provide references as part of that process. And so, as you can imagine, some of those references are systems that are using their products, and we were provided with the opportunity to check a lot of those references in Maryland specifically for Canvas.
And the feedback was all good?
I mean, I think, and Mr. Borkowski said this, it's an enterprise solution. So it's an out of the box solution. So there are going to be things that you have to work through it goes back to what you're saying, in your individual location. And so sometimes a system would say, for us in our place, this was something we had to navigate, but the company worked with us. We were right.
Mhm.
So I don't want to say like it's always glowing, because everything is always out of the box. I think what we're always listening for is the ease of navigating things when they come up, if you have to do something to make it work better for your constituents. Does that make sense? Okay.
And can you explain to me, it's my last question, then I just have a couple of points to make, but can you explain to me, so we still have another system we're using for grading, correct? From what you said, for grade reporting?
So for grade reporting, and this is very typical, you have a student information system, which is PowerSchool for us, and then you have a learning management system. This is a very common configuration in the K-12 space. And so the teacher grading, where students access grades, where family access grades, that's in the learning management system. Whenever you're running these two systems, there is always this pass back into the student information system, because for most school systems, I don't want to say all, because could be inaccurate, but for most school systems, the student information system is your source of truth from a reporting standpoint. And so what we're doing is not unusual in that we're working in one, it's passing back into the student information system, and the student information system is what's producing the reports.
Okay.
Does that
so-
help?
Sure, but that doesn't exist within an LMS?
It's two different things. No, because the student information system does things that don't pertain necessarily to teaching and learning.
Mhm.
And an LMS is really all things teaching and learning.
Okay. Yeah, so two quick things. First of all, I have to reiterate that the elimination of multiple applications for both students and parents coming out of COVID when we started implementing all these different things was just horrendous for my students, and I was hearing from their teachers. So yeah, that's a big plus for me. And then I have had students at 4 different universities. One of them switched to Canvas a year or two in. The rest of them all use Canvas. So very familiar, and it's worked very well from our experience. Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you.
Ms. Hafsa.
Hello to both of you. Thank you for a wonderful presentation as always. Firstly, I'd like to clarify how Canvas integrates with our existing information systems. My understanding is that it will eliminate certain apps and other tools. Can you specify what tools in particular? Are we looking at textbook platforms, library systems, plagiarism detection, announcements? Because I've used Canvas before. I use the current LMS that we use. And so I'm curious to see what exactly the capabilities are.
Thanks. That's a great question.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to start from the academic side, and then when it gets technical, I'm turning things over to Mr. Borkowski. So part of the transition is to look at what I will call all of our digital content, which some of the things you just referenced, right? So it's everything from online textbooks to discovery education to other things that you might access in ClassLink. And with Instructure, we evaluate which of those tools will actually live in the navigation of the learning management system. If it can live in the navigation of Canvas, we sunset where it lives in ClassLink right now so that you can access it directly through the learning management system. And so you won't see like duplicates. When you log into the digital ecosystem, you'll have Canvas and then a few other things. What I will say to you is this isn't going to be, and it's a good thing that it's not, because we're being thoughtful about it, a switch the light. We're like, one day, all of a sudden, everything disappears from Canvas. From ClassLink. We're going to be moving digital tools and resources in there based on how they integrate with the system. Do you want to add to that, though? Because
Yeah.
there's a whole technical piece to that I won't explain well.
You know, on
Just
the
gonna
back
let us-
end, one of our biggest complaints we've heard is too many user IDs and passwords people have to remember. So we want to get to one, obviously. Also, what we want to make sure of is that we're securely passing our data, because we do a lot on the back end rostering, where we're making sure that, you know, when a teacher goes into a specific system, they actually see the students and only the students they should see. So, you know, we're really trying on the back end, again, to clean all this up so that right now we don't have teachers going into systems and rostering their own students. That's extra workload. We want to get out of that business. In addition, from a data privacy standpoint, we really don't want them doing that anyway. So we really want to, again, you know, we want to handle the integration and IT parts of this, you know, seamlessly. We use a one roster standard, which is the standard in the industry to do all this. And then we're going to be looking at also, you know, curating, for instance, our TAME system, which is where all of our instructional materials lie, and bringing that into the learning management system too, so that when teachers are out trying to look for appropriate approved tools and software, you know, for their areas, they're not out looking at another separate system. So there's a lot of, as I call it, cleaning up we're going to do over time. And I do want to say this is going to be an evolution for us. And we do anticipate there will be issues, absolutely. Because what we're going to find is we have systems that are older that aren't going to integrate. And so the question is, are these the systems we really need to partner with, or maybe there's an upgrade required within the vendor space that we haven't done?
I have two things sort of to touch on. Firstly, as Ms. Frank noted earlier, she was curious about limitations. Something I can tell you all right now is that navigation will be a problem as someone who currently uses Canvas and Brightspace. That most certainly will be a struggle for students. I'm curious to see if you can elaborate on the plan for student orientation to this system.
Yes. And I don't want to get ahead of the team that's working on this, but again, like some of this is a little preliminary because we haven't gotten to the contract, which will come in 2 weeks. But essentially, think of it as your orientation happens in your actual content classes throughout the first couple of weeks of school. So there's, again, 2 types of orientation. There's navigation, functionality, where are things, where do I go to access my calendar, where do I go to access my gradebook? But then there's I'm in US history, and this is how in US history I'm going to be able to find my courses, my lessons. So it's a 2-pronged approach in terms of functionality and driven by content and through content for the first couple of weeks of school.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Great question.
Thank you. Hafsa, why do I have to follow you? Great job. So, I was a teacher and had to pivot on a dime when COVID came around, and we did just that. And I taught for 3 or 4 months in a virtual learning world. So it was a challenge, but I rose to that challenge just as we're going to rise to this challenge. So I, as always, write down some comments, may have a question or two. Many of our teachers have had some concerns, for instance, about uploading certain files like PDF files where they'd have to convert those files. I'm assuming that will no longer be the case.
Not an issue.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so the teachers that are out there listening, please make sure you heard that. You will not have to convert any other PDF files. And workload for teachers. So if I'm teaching French 2 and I have 3 sections, I set up one section.
You copy it to sections 2 and 3.
Exactly. So teachers out there, problem solved. Grading input. Well, unfortunately, we have had teachers, and maybe we still do, inputting grades more than one time.
You're using the gradebook in the learning management system.
Problem solved. So I have to say, when I came into this evening, I did have a lot of concerns, if I'm being very honest. But there's some things that I really, really like. I like this thorough review, including, I think you said 90 stakeholders. I was a little curious about why it took 2.5 months to negotiate a contract, but she got there. And so Canvas is, according to the experts, a best fit. And the experts include teachers, students, staff, not just you two sitting there.
Correct.
You are experts. It's simple, easy to use, user-friendly, intuitive. Now, I have to tell you, I did some Googling this morning, and I will tell you that I did see some things that might not necessarily agree with that. However, this is an important change. I really like the fact that there's a different face for the younger learners. I think that's great. There is always going to be a teacher-staff learning curve. But I think our teachers have been so, let's say, unhappy with what they've been doing that once they acclimate themselves to this, that they'll be happy. The steering committee is a marvelous idea to oversee the transition. That's how these transitions should occur. So, Dr. Bedell, my hat's off to you all for that. And guided by subject matter experts. So I'm going to tell you from the standpoint of implementing any change like this in the school itself, one of the best ways to do it is to have experts in the school and even experts departmentally, so that questions can be answered and people can work together about that. This was a great presentation, and I'm just going to say that with a great LMS, which this sounds like it is, the teacher will be given the time to focus on teaching and engaging students. And guess what that's going to do? That is going to improve our student outcomes. And isn't that what it's all about? So, and as I said, this is how a new system should be implemented. So, having said that, yes, sir.
I'd like to clarify something you said. You talked about a transition. This is really a transformation. We really
agree,
are. When you think
agreed.
about where we were coming out of COVID
Agreed.
at the time. We didn't know any better,
Yes.
quite honestly. We did the best we could. We've learned a
Oh,
lot.
we absolutely did.
And, we went
We
out,
did.
we've done research. We've talked to a lot of people in areas trying to figure out, hey, what's the secret sauce? What are you guys doing? So again, this is an evolution. This is a journey for us, but we're up for the challenge.
Absolutely. And again, I just thank you so much. So I'm going to go around again. I know there are a few that have a few more questions. So we'll start with Michelle.
Yes, thank you. My first question involves like the folks that were evaluating all these tools and the various stakeholder groups. So we had central office staff, we had administrators, we had teachers. Did we have student support staff, paraprofessionals in that mix? And if so, like how much so were they involved in that process?
I mean, so I can give you some breakdown. So about 35 were classroom teachers.
Mm-hmm.
And that was divided by secondary and elementary, not equally, but we had a mix of both. There were staff members, about 36, that represented our school-based administrators, content and program staff. We had 6 different families represented at all levels. We had 5 different students, all at the secondary level, both middle and high. And then we had other staff members from instructional technology, student data. And I think that's everybody. Technology represented. Yep.
So support staff, educational support staff were not included in the stakeholder groups?
Classroom teachers.
Okay. The educational support staff are also a stakeholder and they work with our kids every day. I think it's valuable to include all stakeholders in every major decision, especially transformational ones like this, putting it out there. It might be too late for the previous steps that were taken, but involving them now and getting early buy-on from them now, since they also work directly with students, I would recommend that you would do that. I have more. So what I like about the current way to access my child's grades is that it pops up a notification when a grade changes, for example, or I log on to PowerSchool. Are we supposed to say that? It doesn't matter. They're a current contractor. I'm going to say it. When I log on to there, I can see all the grades. I can see what's new. I can see attendance. So will all of those functionalities and capabilities exist in said new system?
So the one thing I can answer is that attendance will not live in the learning management system. Attendance is a function of the student information system. And so that will continue to live where it is. In terms of accessing grades and assignments, that will all be in the learning management system.
So then I, as a parent, if I want to monitor attendance or get notified of attendance, I will still have to have 2 apps on my phone or an app and a website address, correct?
I haven't played out completely what that looks like on a phone. I'm just going to be honest.
Because that's where
but-
most parents get their
right,
information.
Yeah, I can tell you that we're looking for one solution, one app solution. I can't answer where we are right now with that process, but especially since we don't have a contract in place.
Sure.
But I want you to know from a back end standpoint, I want to be very transparent. They are two different systems because attendance lives in a student information system.
Okay, but as a parent, it's important to me and it's valuable to me to know if she is, for example, or let me rephrase, my child, just the general child out there is blowing off second period. I'm not saying that's not what my child does, but just as an example. Or is I put said child on bus and said child is absent weirdly from park period. So that is as an end user and as a stakeholder, it's important to have that information in real time as it happens now. Now,
And
if you're saying
you'll still
that
have the capability of getting it the way you're getting it now. That will
through
not
power,
change.
but it doesn't streamline all the way the various tools that I use as a parent though, because I still need to have my PowerSchool app, and then I'll need to have whatever either app or website address is for said new learning management system. Am I right?
I can't
Yeah.
answer that, but let me look into it and I'll get back to you with an answer on that.
Our student member, who's always the smartest person in the room, is telling me yes, so I'm gonna go with that. And so then that's not streamlined the way it would need. But then could I still log on to just PowerSchool and see your grades then too? Or does that functionality disappear, making it even more of a two things I'm going to need to check as a parent?
So again, there's a grade passback into PowerSchool that occurs on a regular basis.
Right.
So you could see them there. You're not
Via the
going to
app.
see, yes, you're not going to see the level of detail when it comes to feedback in PowerSchool that you will see in the gradebook and the learning management system, because that is where that is the gradebook that teachers will be
Right.
using.
Yeah. I'm just thinking as an end user who wants to. So right now, as an end user, my one-stop shop is that one app that without the functionality of seeing the feedback, which I think is very valuable and important. But I also think there's functionality in PowerSchool that does that now too, because there's notes sometimes that pop up on this. So, but then I'm going to have to now use two things, right? I'm not trying to beat you up. I'm just trying to learn.
No. That's why there will be two main locations, because there's
Hafsa can speak
information
to that.
that's, sorry.
I don't mean to presume as though I'm the expert, but I
No.
use this system every day.
Go
In
ahead.
the current LMS that we have, you can do almost the same thing as they're suggesting and see greater feedback if a teacher chooses to offer it. And you have that option in PowerSchool to just see the grade and the overall grade. My understanding is that would continue with the new LMS, in that you have the option for greater feedback within Canvas, and you have the overall grade and just the pure grades in PowerSchool with attendance. And so in that particular functionality, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't presume it would change much from what we currently have. I think the only difference is that it automatically goes in to PowerSchool. And like, is it not an automatic?
No, it goes in automatically.
It is the grade passback's automatic.
Okay,
You are
so-
absolutely correct. It takes away duplicative efforts on the teacher's part.
Well, that's important. I fight for that, and lessening their workload and streamlining this, which was one of the multiple things that didn't go as we all wanted it to the last time around. Okay, so that answers that part. I'm just looking at my notes to see if we missed anything. So from a cost perspective, we have what we have now, and we have all the other things that we have now. Will this end up being more cost efficient in the long run? Or I'm not saying that we can put a dollar amount on our child's education, although gosh, I really would, and please fully fund us always, funders. but I'm just wondering, Matt to save the day. Sorry, Mr. Sansky.
Good evening. Again, for the record, Matt Stansky, Chief Financial Officer. So just a reminder to the board, both in the action you took 2 weeks ago in the budget supplemental, as well as the presentation we gave Monday on COVID spending, there was money appropriated to implement a new LMS. The existing LMS, as a reminder again to everybody, has been funded through ESSER dollars. So those ESSER dollars are going away. So no matter what we do, what we choose, there will be a FY26 impact based on that.
Thank you.
Based on that funding source.
Thank you.
But
The light dawns.
yes,
Yeah.
but and again, I think the importance of going through the RFI evaluation process is that the rubric, the scoring is strictly based on what is going to be best for teachers and students, regardless of price.
Okay.
But I will say
Great.
all three products are priced relatively similarly in other systems.
I really, really appreciate that. So I think that was mostly it for my questions and comments right now. I'm really grateful for this. I just would advise anyone who has to use this system to instruct or assist or interact with students has to be in the ground level of adoption and use and PD and all of the things, because they are a stakeholder too. And thank you for all of this. Appreciate it.
Dr. Tobin.
Thank you. You've alluded to this, Mr. Burkowski, but obviously this is something that keeps board members and superintendents up at night. Can we talk about security? I'm presuming that that's a given with these systems, that that's part of what we're purchasing to a certain extent, but could you say a little bit as to what security this may or may, I mean, not how it happens, but how that consideration works into this?
Well, anybody that signs a contract with AACPS has to agree to follow all the federal and state laws we have to adhere to. So that's everything from, NIST 800-53 R4, which is, around hosting, secure web hosting and such. And, FERPA, if there's FERPA data, and, HIPAA, if there's any HIPAA data, which wouldn't be in this system. But again, the vendors are, responsible to adhere to that. Also, they have to have SOC 2 reports and all the things, that are required. We take the very stringent stance like federal governments do. And the reason why is because we receive federal dollars.
Right.
So we have to adhere. We're also audited over and over again. So we make sure that any vendor we do business with, adheres to all those security controls. Now, obviously, at the end of the day, when your systems are hosted in somebody else's data center, I mean, the risk you take there is you're transferring the burden of risk over to them to do their work. Now, obviously, they're going to spend a lot of money on security, because if not, and they're not secure, they're not going to be in business very long.
Right.
So, Canvas is a company that has a large market share. Obviously, if there were security concerns, they would have reared itself by now. And, we feel very confident that this system is very secure.
Thank you. The other thing, and again, this came up a little bit in Ms. Scholheim's comments. I think it's incredibly important that these things work very well on the phones, because in my district, I have many, many families who don't have laptops, who don't even have anything but minute by minute data. And so the ability to access what has to be accessed on a phone efficiently, not having to download PDFs, not having to do all that kind of thing, is really critical. So I don't know where you are with that at this point, but if you can say a few things about it, I'd appreciate it.
What's that? Yeah, I mean, we're not going to roll the app right away, but,
Sure.
as far as responsive design with, HTML5 and so on and so forth, again, when you look at it, whether it's on whether it's on a tablet whether it's on a phone, whether it's on a laptop, desktop, whatever it is, it's going to render, to what the device itself is. And so we did look at that when we were going
Okay.
through, just to make sure that, again, it gave a very pleasant user experience from a responsive design perspective.
I mean, this becomes a real equity issue if that doesn't work. And so that is something that, I think I would hope that it gets rolled out pretty simultaneously for families, because you really will have a lot of population that has a big barrier in front of them if that's not front and center. Not to mention our students, not to mention, the rest of us who are running around, but it really is an equity barrier if that's not there. So otherwise, thank you very much. Much appreciated.
Okay, seeing no more lights, so I just want to take the opportunity to thank Mr. Borkowski, Ms. Catalano, Mr. Stansky, and all of the stakeholders on the groups that came together to help put this presentation together. And of course, finally, Dr. Bedell for this superb presentation by your staff. So we know there will be challenges, but guess what? We will adapt and we will improve student outcomes. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to be moving on to item 5.01. That's our CRAS report. I believe we have a video.
Good evening, President Silkworth, Vice President Frank, Dr. Burdell, and members of the board. My name is Jason Semenoff Jr. My pronouns are he, him. I'm a proud freshman at Chesapeake High School, and I'm so honored to be serving as the CRAS Secretary of Education. I'm delivering my report virtually this month, as I'm currently at Annapolis High School competing in the 2024 AACPS Marching Band Exhibition with my school. On September 21st, secondary students across the state had the opportunity to attend the MASC Workshop Presenter Certification at Western High School in Baltimore City. At this event, students were trained to create student-led, high-quality workshops, giving them the necessary skills to become an effective presenter. Be on the lookout for information about the upcoming Fall Leadership Conference on November 23rd. From September 17th to October 8th, our high schools hosted voter registration drives in collaboration with the Board of Elections. We had 148 high school students register to vote, and 88 students took applications home to complete. A very special thank you to Ms. Nicole Pill from the Anne Arundel County Board of Elections, Ms. Vera Hira from the League of Women Voters, and Mr. Ralph Thomas from the AA County NAACP for partnering with AACPS to make this happen. The State Board of Elections is still in need of students 14 or 15 years of age to work as Election Day pages. You can earn service learning credit too. Go to the State Board of Elections website to apply. The first episode of Season 3 of Teen Talk premiered on Wednesday, October 2nd. This was an amazing first episode with our new host, Sue Kim, and an interview with our new AACPS Coordinator of Wellness and 2024 Maryland State Teacher of the Year, Mary Kay Connerton. The Teen Talk team also took a trip to Seven Run High School to talk to students and faculty about what it's been like to build a new school community. The Krask Middle School Town Hall was held yesterday, October 15th, via Google Meet. Our middle school council was hard at work presenting workshops and hosting a Q&A session for middle school students. The town hall was a great success. Shout out to all of the hard work put forth by our amazing middle school council. On November 13th, Krask will be co-hosting a General Assembly with the North County High School Avidum Club. Avidum means I've got your back, and the organization empowers students to break the silence on issues surrounding mental health. Students will be attending workshops led by Avidum Club members at North County High School and have a chance to connect with others from across the county. Interested high school students should ask their SGA advisor for more information and a permission form. A special thank you for the grant support from Burgers and Bands to make this event happen. If any student wants to find out more about Krask, make sure to check the calendar on the Krask website for a list of upcoming meetings and leadership events. Finally, Krask would like to thank school SGAs and administrators for the amazing Spirit Weeks and homecoming dances that have happened or are upcoming. Thank you to all of those that make these events possible. That's all for me, and see you next month.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to item 5.02, PTA report. I don't believe we have a PTA report this evening, so we'll move on to item 5.03, our CAC report.
Good evening. Is that on? I guess. I think so. Good evening, President Silkworth, Vice President Frank, Dr. Bedell, members of the board. John Conwell here this evening to represent or to provide the Citizen Advisory Committee report from our most recent meeting, which was just Monday, October 14th. Got to get the day right. October 14th. We continue to evaluate and review the policies that have been referred to us. We took a deep look at two different policies at our most recent meeting. One, which you'll be hearing tonight, of course, is KH. We heard a report from our policy representative, Melanie Teacher, who told us what's been happening with that policy at the policy committee, and we broke into 5 separate groups where we had folks talk about it and kind of go over the report and then report back out, so we could have a dialogue about, what you are looking at. And so if there's additional information needed at the future policy meetings, Melanie will be able to represent what we saw as well. We also took a look, we continue to take a look at the personal electronic devices policy, JCO. Again, an evolving and interesting one that I don't think will, as we continue to evolve as a society with electronic devices alike, this policy will also continue to evolve, much like the conversation you had earlier. But it's a wonderful dialogue that we have. We again broke into small sessions, or small groups, 8 of them this time, so that folks could talk about it. We had a readout and reports. We consolidated those into a larger report, which Melanie will then be able to bring to the policy committee and share the learnings at that time. Our next meeting will be virtual as well at November 11th, and we continue to look at these policies and others that you've referred. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're moving on to item 5.04, Budget Committee report. Ms. Frank.
Thank you. The Budget Committee also met Monday, October 14th, and we reviewed the board's internal budget. We reviewed the audit, and we made some recommendations for the full board, which we discussed. That budget will be moving into the superintendent's. It will be submitted to the superintendent for his budget process. Thank you. Very quick meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Frank. So moving on to item 5.05, President's Report. I have a few items to report on. Last week, the annual MABE conference was held here in Annapolis. The Board of Education members from across the state came together with a strong lineup of topics, speakers, working sessions, and networking opportunities. Keynote speakers included Scott Friedman, who told us the best way to predict the future is to create it. We were also honored to hear from our State Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Carrie M. Wright. One of the highlights of the conference was a breakout session, of course, that was based on the Maryland Blueprint, focused on effective resource allocation strategies by none other than our own Matt Stansky. And Matt Stansky, Matt, you did a great job. The house was packed. He did a marvelous job, and we thank Matt for his great work. On October 4, Dr. Tobin, Dr. Bedell, and I had the honor and privilege to attend the 34th Annual Maryland Teacher of the Year Awards Gala. We had the opportunity to celebrate with our own AACPS Teacher of the Year, Elizabeth Heist. And congratulations, of course, to Elizabeth Heist. We are so very proud of you. On October 14th, Ms. Schalheim, Dr. Tobin, and I attended the Innovative Scheduling Committee meeting. And at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Tobin for a few comments.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to say a couple of words because there's been, I think, some concern and some confusion possibly about what the work group is, and it is a work group. It was convened really because, as many know who have been following this board's legislative platform for the last couple of years, that we have, at the urging of Dr. Bedell, and we're all on the same page on this, been pursuing the opportunity to change the language in the law that governs how the code on how the schools function from 180 days and a certain number of hours to, we would like to see 180 days or a certain number of hours, giving us thereby some flexibility, giving us thereby the opportunity, for example, to no longer have early release days, which I think many families, many students, many educators find to be difficult and less than fruitful at times. As we engage in this, it was determined that it would be worth bringing stakeholders from many areas together to think about what flexibility in scheduling might look like. And this work group has taken the opportunity to evaluate a number of different scheduling options that exist around this country and around the world, with an eye to, might any of these be worth pursuing at some point should we have more flexibility in our schedule for AACPS, not with an intent to come out of a work group and impose any new schedule. The goal of the work group is ultimately to produce a report, which could then be guidance for what might be pursued down the line as an option that the larger community or a community of a particular school might want to look at. So I say that I hope that clarifies a little about what this process has been, what the purpose of it is. Much has been mentioned this evening in the presentation on the LMS about transformation. Education evolves. That's the nature of the beast. And we want to be able to be in a position to examine many different options for our students because they live and will live in a changing world. And we would be remiss, I believe, if we were not taking a look at what's out there and thinking about what could be possible down the line for them. So there are many qualifiers in what I've said for a reason. This is simply a matter of exploration. So I hope that helps some of those out there who have been confused about what this group is. And I know that Ms. Wilson, who has facilitated it, is taking emails from many people. That's been put out there and responding to them. But I hoped it would be valuable to have some sort of statement in tonight's meeting to help clarify. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Tobin, for the clarification. So on Monday evening, October 14th, the workshop was held here in the boardroom with a presentation by Matt Stansky and Christina Catalana, the post-pandemic report. Chief Operating Officer Matt Stansky reviewed pandemic-related spending for the board Monday night. He told us that the programs and resources we have been able to sustain through a forward-thinking approach to move them from grant funding to our operating budget have put us in a better position than some other systems. He also shared that the state of Maryland, for all the wealth that we have, still has over 50% of public school students qualifying for free and reduced lunch. Chief Academic Officer Christina Catalana compared metrics of academic success from 2019 to 2023. The greatest need was acceleration for student learning. And so I do think we were able to attack that from a multi-pronged approach. Ms. Catalana outlined the district's ongoing strategies for improving the metrics that are behind, including expanding access to accelerated math and language arts in middle schools, offering the PSAT to younger students, and providing academic support or acceleration. And I made a comment, I believe that the pandemic exposed a lot of weaknesses, but guess what? As a school system with all of our great teachers and students, we pivoted on a dime. And if somebody had asked me back in 2000 or 2019 or 20, when do you think every student will have a Chromebook? I would have said at that time, probably never. So I would like to take this opportunity to thank once again Mr. Stancy, Ms. Catalano, all the staff for a marvelous presentation, as well as Dr. Bedell for providing this workshop for the board of that. So thank you so much. That does conclude my report this evening. So we're going to move on to item 5.06. Before I do that, I do have one other thing, Dr. Bedell. And it's my understanding that this is National School Lunch Week. I believe that is true. I found that I saw that this morning, National School Lunch Week. So I have a picture here which shows some of our stakeholders who are actually partaking of that lunch. Oh, Dr. Bedell, that kind of looks a little bit like you. North County High School. So National School Lunch Week. There you go. Okay, we're moving on to item 5.06, Superintendent's Report. Dr. Bedell.
Thank you, Mr. President. Before I get into my report, as you all heard earlier, I had an opportunity to go out and take pictures with our student that was the recipient of the Student Equity in Action Spotlight, Lindsay, from Northeast High School. She says she bowled, and they said she's a pretty good bowler. And so, as many of you who may know a little bit about me, I love to play basketball. I like to walk up to kids who are taller than me and kind of size them up and see if what they can do. But I also like to bowl. At least I think I can bowl. And so I asked her outside, what do you bowl? And she says, my average is a 180. I said, oh, that's pretty good. Her father says, but her high is a 279. And then what made me back off of saying maybe we should see what each other could do is that she said, and I have 16 bowling balls. I said, okay, you are real. I have 2, and I have some shoes, and that's about it. And so there will be no challenges coming from Dr. Bedell to Lindsay when it comes to bowling. All right, let's get into the reports. I want to start by recognizing that October is National Principals Month, and to thank each and every one of our principals for the work they are doing in our schools. I have been in every school at least once since I've arrived, and I continue to be very impressed with the work these instructional leaders are doing. The work that they do is not easy. Having to manage hundreds of kids and thousands of kids, the community that they are responsible for, and then the number of things that I think we put on them that are either federally or state-related mandates. It is not an easy job to be a building administrator. And so I really commend them on that. And on top of that, they have to kind of be on their game because I do unannounced visits. And so I like to see what's authentically happening in schools. And today was an unannounced visit to Severn Run High School. So I had an opportunity to go in and kind of see what was happening over there. But I thank them for their flexibility and their ability to make adjustments as, I come to the schools to see how we could best support them. If you've been in our school cafeterias this week, as you've just heard from Mr. Silkworth, you've likely noticed a pirate or two. That's because this is National School Lunch Week, and our Food and Nutrition Services team is going all out for the School Lunch Pirates theme. This week is designed to highlight all of the benefits of school lunches and provides another opportunity to talk about our outstanding Food and Nutrition Services team. I was really happy yesterday to be able to announce a bonus of up to $2,000 for our food and nutrition service workers. And I want to thank this board and AFSCME, which represents these employees, for their collaborative work to make this happen. I make sure that every time that I go to a school, I'm not only visiting classrooms, I go to check on custodians. If I'm there during dismissal or opening of school, I will go out and check on bus drivers. And I always make sure that I go into the cafeteria to check on the employees back there because the work that they do is extremely important. And I can tell you today, the smiles that was on their faces because that payment hit their checks today. And the fact that they said it just feels good that somebody's thinking about us says a lot. And I hope that it will help to reverse the way that our current numbers look because they don't get paid a lot and they don't have a lot of hours. And so it makes it very difficult to be able to have some sustainability in that position when I also have students telling me we want better lunches, we want better options, I can't give them those improvements if I cannot staff to the level that I need in order to begin to do things differently. And so hopefully this is the beginning of some of those changes. We have openings to join the team at several schools. So if anyone is listening, is interested, or knows someone who is interested in working with our teams, please call 410-222-5900 or go to www.aacps.org/join our team. All of this is on our website. Those hired by December 22nd will still qualify for the full bonus. Next, I want to highlight a few honors earned by members of our amazing staff. I am continually reminded how fortunate our students, families, and communities are to have such dedicated people working on behalf of our children. First is Frances Cruz Serrano. And I just think the world of her. She is amazing. She's our International Family Involvement Specialist who received the inaugural Educator of the Year Award as part of the Anne Arundel County Hispanic Heritage Awards. Frances has worked closely with our international family since 2015 and has led our International Parent and Community Leadership Academy for the last several years. Next is Tyler Heights Elementary School Principal Julia Wash, who is one of 14 recipients across the state of the Connected School Leader Award given by the Maryland Association of Elementary School Principals. The honor goes to principals who intentionally seek ways to develop communities where collaboration is not just encouraged, but is celebrated, leading to innovative solutions and a more cohesive team. And I had an opportunity to observe that last week with an event that they had which was just absolutely packed, both inside of the cafeteria and outside. And next is a group that doesn't get a lot of public recognition, but is absolutely vital to our school system. The work of our team in the purchasing office has resulted in the earning of the Excellence in Procurement Award from the National Procurement Institute for the 13th straight year. Only 23 school systems and 198 agencies across the nation earned this award. Congratulations to the members of this team for all they do to ensure the prudent use of taxpayer resources, and again, led by Matt Stansky. Great job. I want to put in a plug for our second county championships showcase. This is a celebration of our student athletes, which features 11 championship games in 7 sports at Annapolis High School. Things will kick off at 2 p.m. on Friday with unified tennis and continue all day Saturday, beginning with the cross-country championships at 8:30 a.m. One $8 ticket gets you into every event except varsity cheerleading, which requires a separate ticket for space reasons. Tickets are now on sale, and more information is online at www.aacps.org/showcase. Current staffing vacancies. As I generally will provide to the board and the community, I want to update everybody on our vacancies. As you can see, we've added a new category here, teacher assistants. We understand the importance that the role that a teacher assistant plays inside of our schools, and it's an area that we do have vacancies. And so if we don't have this information up, people don't know what to apply for and where we need help. And so our goal is to hopefully see that this number begins to decrease. And as you can see, as I talked about earlier, food service workers is an area where we are really struggling as a school district. So I hope that what we've been able to do will make a difference. And then as we continue to look at how we budget and support those employees, we know that there's a lot of work to be done in that area as we work with our elected officials. Teachers, 54. When you talk about 5,800 teachers, those numbers are simply amazing. But we also know that we want to have 0 across the board to the best of our ability. and that's what we will continue to do. School safety and security. I feel it's important to continue to provide updates on our school safety and security efforts. Members of our school system's central office and school-based staff joined with county police and Department of Health officials last week for a statewide mock exercise organized by the Maryland Center for School Safety. Teams from every school system in the state participated and talked through their own reactions to a scenario that was provided, then shared their thoughts and decisions for all to hear. This is just another way that we are continuing to work to keep our schools and facilities as safe as possible and to be prepared to respond to emergencies that will arise. Finally, I want to remind this board and the public of something I said in my first board meeting on August 24, 2022. Tone matters. It matters greatly. Words also matter. They matter greatly. These words are found on page 15 of the board handbook. Board members are expected to respect all stakeholders by listening to all points of views and communicating our opinions, concerns, and questions without disparaging other board members, the superintendent, staff, or community members. Respect is a huge thing for me. I think everyone knows that by now. To have an action that I have taken in what I believe is in the best interest of children called abusive is more than disrespectful. It's outrageous. We can disagree about decisions that are made, but there's a line that is drawn. I would never describe any decision by a member of this board as abusive. And I won't sit silently and have my decisions characterized that way either. Mr. President, that concludes the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Dr. Bedell. Ms. Shalheim.
I just want to go back to the staffing slide. And you don't have to pull it up if you don't. Okay, there it is. This is so good because this addition recognizes the important work that this group of people does for our students and our schools equally with all the other areas that we need for our schools to run and run well and serve all of our kids every day. So I don't know whose wonderful idea this is, but I'm here for it and I love it. And this helps broadcast this need because teachers will be more effective if they're properly supported in that way, especially when we're supporting ever diversifying groups of students and we see how the demographics have shifted over time. I really, really love this. Thank you for doing this.
Well, I'll be honest, I'm not going to take credit for it. It comes in my quarterly meetings, conversation I had with Mr. Darjan. And I said, hey, that makes a lot of sense. And so I'll bring it to the team and we'll make sure that we get it up there. So we will make sure that we do our job to be more inclusive. I think the point is well taken about TAs being a part of the sandbox experience. So, we take the criticism and we will move forward and make sure that we operate differently. Thank you.
I think this is great. Thank you so much. Yay. Thanks.
Dr. Tobin.
Yes, I agree. I also wanted to add my congratulations to Ms. Walsh of Tyler Heights to the many awards I think she has won at this point. And to just say that she continues to do extraordinary work at Tyler Heights Elementary, including our first dual language enrollment program. And so congratulations, Ms. Walsh, and thank you for everything that you do.
Okay, Ms. Frank.
Yes, thank you. I wasn't sure if I was going to talk about the recess again tonight, but since Dr. Bedell brought it up, I did want to kind of circle back to that. Dr. Bedell, do we withhold food or lunch from our 3 and 4-year-olds?
Not that I'm aware of. Do we withhold food?
Would we withhold food from a child as a practice?
No.
Why is that?
Because it's a necessity.
Because it's a necessity. So the comment that I made was that it is abusive to withhold necessities from a child. So I would stand by that comment because I believe that recess is a necessity. We have 3 and 4-year-olds coming into our school buildings and they require play. So I'm going to continue to say that I believe that recess is a necessity. We would not withhold things like food from a child. We should not be considering withholding things like recess. I also mentioned that curriculum is not essential, and I would stand by that too. It is not a need. And while children do need to learn, that is a necessity. Learning is a necessity. Children learn through play. And I think that any system that has 85,000 children should never forget that. And while tone does matter, I am being respectful in my tone, but I am allowed to disagree with you.
You are allowed to disagree with me. To use the word abuse, quite frankly, is completely inappropriate. And what it does, it touches people who've actually experienced abuse in other ways that has nothing to do with a superintendent making a decision that children, we want to make sure that we're able to get through a curriculum where children still have time to play. Children still have opportunities to have break. They're not sitting down, as you referred to, 6 hours and not have an opportunity to have movement and to engage. And we're talking about 12 early release days so we can get through a curriculum, because you as a board member are one of the main people weaponizing and jumping on us about our data. I'm trying to do something about it, and now that's a problem.
So I wouldn't say that I'm weaponizing it. What I would say is I do believe that our scores need to improve and that there should be a greater focus on academics. Since you brought that up, I would also just like to point out that during our 6-hour, 2-hour release days, there were some lessons about identity, and there were some lessons about what this particular slide that I found, what is identity? This is a kindergarten class, by the way. Identity is what makes you who you are, the way you think about yourselves and the characteristics that define you. I don't see how that adds to our curriculum, to our reading, our writing, or arithmetic. I would say if you wanted to cut some of our classes or our class time, that would be a great place to start. Thank you.
Okay, if I can interject one thing, we do have this issue about the 12 days. We also have the issue about recess. I'm all about student safety. But I will tell you that I do have the confidence in our teachers at all levels. I can tell you when I taught, there was an awful lot in my classroom. There was an awful lot of activity that kids weren't seated at their desks. They were up and around, they were dancing, there was a tremendous amount of activity. And I'm going to suggest to everyone that in light of where we are, it's not the perfect world, of course. However, we all know the importance of recess, but I honestly believe that physical activity is something that will be incorporated by our grade staff so that our kids will have the activity. It may not necessarily be outside. As I said, a lot of activity in my classroom was very physical, and kids were up and about and literally dancing, using videos, using a lot of things. So having said that, folks, let's move on. We're going to be moving on to Ms. Ellis.
I was not able to attend the workshop on Monday, but I did apprise myself of the communications and what the concerns were. I request that we have an agenda item in the next meeting or two. Unless I'm misunderstanding. So let me ask you, Dr. Bedell. Is there already a plan to handle this differently on the remaining 2-hour dismissals, or can we visit this as a agenda item to collaborate on solutions?
Yeah, I mean, the plan at this point is teachers will have opportunities to give students the breaks. They will have opportunities to be able to move about in their classrooms just as they do now. It's no different than what happens on a day when we have snow outside or rain. They don't go outside on those days. They're in the schools and they're doing activities in their classrooms. The difference, Ms. Ellis, that we're dealing with right now is we have the shortest elementary school day instructionally in the state of Maryland. We have the most early release days in the state of Maryland. I've been asked by you all as a board to bring high quality curriculum here to transition this school district to the science of reading. We've done that. And the issue that I'm running into is on these 12 early release days, the instructional time to be able to get through that curriculum and to get through it with fidelity at the end of the year, it's taking a hit. And it's something that realistically, so part of the reason why the board just found out about it last week, because we just realized, whoa, we're not going to be able to get through this curriculum. And so what we were saying was the 30 minutes on those 6 days, we're asking our teachers to work to give kids brain breaks and opportunities, but to ensure that we are able to get through the curriculum, because what we also know is, yes, they are leaving 2 hours early. We also know that they still have their their special classes where they're moving about and going to PE and all of those different courses during the day. And they still have opportunities to have those brain breaks and those activities inside of the classroom. So that's the reason why we're trying to work to get legislation passed so we don't have to deal with this matter.
I understand. I wasn't asking for an explanation. I was just asking because if you had already made some different plan, it would kind of make my request unnecessary. But I think it would be good to visit because it's a big concern. Because I do think we can get creative on, because recess is about much more than movement. It's about unstructured time.
Yes, ma'am. And I understand.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. So I'm sure I can get other board members to join in the request for an agenda item to look for some solutions. Thank you.
Hafsa?
Yes, I just wanted, excuse me, I wanted to clarify something very quickly, Dr. Bedell. Those extra 30 minutes, are they being used exclusively for the reading curriculum, or is that being distributed?
No, it's to ensure that we get through the reading curriculum, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's the answer, right? I just want to make sure.
Hi, Christina Catalano. We just structured a schedule so that we can stay on pace with the literacy and math curriculums that we adopted. And so Mr. Silkworth said it beautiful. Teachers always use good sound judgment and know when students need to get up, move around, have unstructured opportunities to take breaks. We just provided guidance and a schedule that would allow ample time to engage with the high quality instructional materials, even though it's an early release day.
Okay. Let's move on. We're going to move on to the award of contracts. I believe we have 6.01, 6.02, and 6.04. Do I hear a bundle?
Yeah, you do. I move to bundle those. Thank
Do
you.
we have a second for the bundle?
Second.
Okay, and we have consensus for the bundling? We do. Dr. Bedell.
Thank you, Mr. President. The superintendent recommends that the Board of Education authorize award of the contracts under consent items 6.01 through 6.03. I know it's only 3 of them. So 6.01, 6.02, and 6.04.
Second. I was so moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion. We have a second. Do we have any discussion? Ms. Howe?
Dr. Tobin?
Aye.
Ms. Ellis?
Aye.
Ms. Schallheim?
Aye.
Ms. Hamdawi?
Aye.
Ms. Frank?
Nay.
And Mr. Silkworth?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-1.
Okay, we're going to be moving on to item which is 7.01, ratification negotiated agreement between the Board of Ed Teachers Association of Anne Arundel County fiscal year 2024. 5.
All right, for this
Bedell.
item, we will have our Chief Negotiator, Melissa Rawls.
Good evening. My name is Melissa Rawls, and I am happy to be here to Mr. Silkworth, Dr. Bedell, and members of the board. The negotiating teams for the Board of Education and the Teachers Association of Anne Arundel County have reached a tentative agreement for fiscal year 2025, subject to your approval. In brief, the summary of changes as agreed upon by both parties include, but are not limited to, a step increase for all eligible Unit 1 employees, a 3% COLA for all Unit 1 employees, healthcare modifications, the implementation of a middle school athletic pay structure, and the establishment of the AACPS career ladder as required by the Blueprint for Maryland's Future. The negotiating teams work diligently to secure an agreement that prioritizes the needs of Anne Arundel County Public Schools, TAC members, and supports our shared commitment to AACPS students, staff, and community. I would like to acknowledge TAC Executive Director Scott Soares, former President Nicole Disney Bates, current President Christina Corona, and the entire bargaining team for their dedication and hard work throughout FY25 negotiations. On October 15th, 2024, TAC ratified this agreement, and I respectfully request your approval and ratification of the noted summary of changes.
Thank you. Do we hear a motion?
Move to approve this wonderful contract.
Second. We have a motion. We have a second. Do we have any discussion? Seeing none, Ms. Howe. Just a second, Ms. Frank.
I also want to thank you, Ms. Rawls, for all of your hard work in this. We greatly appreciate your dedication to this process.
Thank you.
Ms. Howe.
Dr. Tobin,
Aye.
Ms. Ellis,
Aye.
Ms. Schallheim,
Aye.
Ms. Hemdawi,
Aye.
Ms. Frank,
Aye.
Mr. Silkworth.
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0.
Okay, and I also would like to thank you so much, Ms. Rawls.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, moving on to item 7.02, we have a policy on a first reading code, Board Committees Code BBE.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have Ms. Grace Wilson, who will take us through these next 3 policy items.
Good evening, President Silkworth, Vice President Frank, Dr. Bedell, and members of the board. I'm Grace Wilson, Senior Legislative and Policy Specialist for the school district. Policy BBE, Board Committees, is before you on first reading this evening. The policy was last revised in December of 2021 and is being updated to account for the board's recent adoption of Policy BL, Board Emergency Management. This policy requires that the board establish a Continuity of Operations Plan or COOP committee. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions you may have regarding this policy.
Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Ms. Wilson. Moving on to item 7.03, School Bus Driver Qualifications Code EAG, first reading.
Policy EAG, School Bus Driver Qualifications, is also before you on first reading this evening. This policy was last revised in 2012 and is being updated to account for AACPS's use of school vehicles in addition to school buses and to add appropriate legal references. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions you have on policy EAG.
Okay, I see no lights. So once again, thank you, Ms. Wilson. So moving on to item 7.04, Parent Family Community Involvement Code KH, first reading.
Thank you, Mr. Silkworth. This policy was last revised in 2004 and is being updated at the board's request to align with the National PTA's National Standards for Family School Partnership and to add language to the issue statement. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions you have on policy KH.
Okay, once again, I'm seeing no lights. So we thank you so much, Ms. Wilson.
Thank you all.
So that brings us to item 8.0, review items 8.1, 8.01, 8.02, 8.03, operating budget closeout, monthly financial status report, construction status report. Any concerns, folks? Okay, seeing none, do I hear by the way, we have no testimony this evening on non-agenda items. So do I hear a motion?
Motion to adjourn?
And a second?
Second.
I heard it. So just for everyone's information, Policy Committee will be meeting on November the 4th. That'll be a virtual meeting at 3 o'clock. Budget Committee meets Monday, November 18th at 12 p.m. virtual meeting. And the next general board meeting will be Wednesday, November the 6th, 6:30 p.m. in the boardroom. Thank you so much for being with us this evening. Hey, have a great night.